So let's talk about on social media in the last day or so. There's been a lot of discussion of this case where a student wrote what can only honestly be described as one of the worst papers of all time, receiving a failing grade and then claiming it was discrimination for their Christian beliefs. As a result, the trans teacher, or I guess teacher's assistant, so trans TA, has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. For some reason, the Turning Point chapter of Oklahoma University, yes, that is TPUSA, as in the same that gave us was given to us by Charlie Kirk. Everywhere I go, I see his face. Just everything reminds me of him. They decided it would be a good idea to make a long-ass post and show off the entire essay. Now, if this were just the first half of this story where, Christian conservative student thinks they're being discriminated against and trans professor on leave, that's the narrative the conservatives are running with. The problem is that it is incredibly undermined when you actually read the quote-unquote essay, which we will do in a moment. I want to get through this article from them, though. Just going over the broad points. The University of Oklahoma has placed a transgender teaching assistant on admin leave after she gave a student no credit for an essay that called trans identities, quote, demonic, and claimed that gender roles are biblically ordained. OU student Samantha Fulnecki filed a religious discrimination complaint in November, alleging the graduate psychology student Mel Kurth inappropriately handed her a failing grade for a reaction essay to assigned reading that involved gender roles in society. Fulnecki's essay, shared this weekend by the OU chapter of Turning Point USA, claimed that gender stereotypes reflect, quote, God's original plan for humans, and that children should be raised to believe they do not belong to themselves, but they belong to the Lord. So a lot of people kind of have jumped down OU's throat for this, but they kind of don't have any recourse. When a quote-unquote serious allegation of any stripe is filed, this is generally what happens. Somebody is placed on leave pending an investigation. So I don't have too much bad to say about that, unless it's eventually shown or their investigation comes up with nothing. Like if they sincerely say that, oh, this was good faith and this was discrimination, then that is very obviously bullshit. Which, again, kind of jumping the gun. We'll see when we get to the essay. So, we at Turning Point OU stand behind Samantha. Transgender professor fails student for quoting the Bible in her essay. Yeah, that's why. That's why. It is this thing that fucking, like, this is like Alex Jones shit. This is the type of shit that Alex Jones does, where they'll be like, oh, they don't want kids to be praying in schools. They want to take the Ten Commandments and they want to turn your kids gay, and your kid will go to class and come home with a sex change operation. It's just like, that's not how anything fucking works. It's the same thing with like the third trimester abortion bullshit, where it's like, that's not how any of this fucking works. College isn't a place for necessarily smart people. It is a place for people with money more than anything else, or if like me you went to community college, less money and scholarships / grants, which the route I took to my prestigious 2-year degree. This article was very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. God made me... Oh my God, this is so fucking... Okay, chat. So one of the things, and this is classic, like 7th grade. I think I learned this shit before 7th grade, but you have the tiered argumentative essay structure, right? Where you have the intro, outro, 3 points in the middle. You discuss each one in a different paragraph, and they move from one to another. This is already fucking that all up. This is just like assertions, and I don't even see like a paragraph break. I didn't see any indenting. God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. Okay, so repetition. God is very intentional with what he makes. That's also just repeating the same shit. See, I'm stuck between two things here. I'm stuck between actually editing the essay to say what it's trying to say in a more concise way. But then the problem is what it's trying to say is also not based in anything but like personal bias and belief. Like there's nothing here that is calling back. If you want to make this argument, sure, you can. But you have to provide some concrete basis and concrete facts, provide some actual philosophical underpinning. Provide a theologian or a scholar talking about why these things are important to Western culture, to law, where we, get these ideas, why they're important. God is very intentional with what he makes, and I believe trying to change. Again, argumentative essays, I believe trying to change that would only do more harm. Okay, well, if you make an assertion, so this is a thing that we see a lot in like the kind of unscripted videos that you see from like we watch a number of videos from chuds and stuff, where they will make an assertion, but it is generally just like a quote unquote a truth that is accepted within their own community, so they don't need to really illuminate it more. And this is where I come in, where when I am writing things, I can't just make an assertion if I am trying to make a full explanatory video on it, right? Because if I fail in one of those explanations, or if I do not go fully into a controversy and it's actually important for the overall piece, then what is the fucking point? Like, if I'm not being as thorough as possible, why bother? Gender roles and tendencies should not be considered stereotypes. Women naturally want to do womanly things. So we're just carrying on in a rant format instead of making this assertion and then explaining why. Like, their assertion is that women naturally want to do womanly things. And these are the people who will tell you that your definition of what a woman is somehow self-circular. Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. Repetition again. Same goes for men. God created men in the image of his courage and strength, and he created women in the image of his beauty. He intentionally created women differently than men, and we should live our lives with that in mind. So thus far, we have not even actually, I would have taken at this point, quoting the Bible. I would have. The Bible is a historical document. It is fictional, but it is a historical document. They're not even doing that. Because where did they say in the Bible, God created men in the image of his courage and strength? Again, this would be great to have a theologian weigh in on and kind of actually illuminate the thought process here. It is frustrating to me when I read articles like this and discussion posts from my classmates of so many people trying to conform to the same mundane opinion so they do not step on people's toes. Okay, you don't need a comma there. Same mundane opinion. So also this kind of backhanded derision towards people because, of course, naturally, I'm not like other girls. I'm a fucking moron. I think that is a cowardly and insincere way to live. Oh, boy. It is important to use the freedom of speech we have been given in this country, and I personally believe that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, my God. How do you manage to repeat yourself this much in 650-ish words? It is perfectly normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes because that is how God made us. Okay. I'm gonna God actually didn't make people to let's follow the logic here for a second. I'm gonna try and engage in slight good faith. Let's follow the logic that God made kids. God did not make society or societal structures. God did not make the way that we have put male and quote-unquote female behaviors into little boxes of determining who is or isn't masculine or feminine based on completely arbitrary constraints. We did that. So the idea again, that if you work backwards from this, we have been given rights in this country. Eliminating gender pulls us farther from God's original plan. It's perfectly normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes because that is how God made us. We didn't make that. We made that conception of God to justify doing these things. Like, even if you were to take the Bible as the whole truth and the Word of God and divinely inspired and all that shit, there is nothing in the Bible that says boys need to play with monster trucks, girls can't play in the dirt, girls need to curtsy, boys have to like fucking dinosaurs or whatever the fuck, girls can't play with trains. Like, that was shit humans came up with because of our insecurities about these social structures, and then we forced them onto other people using God as a justification. Remember when I talked about the Blair White thing, how this Christian grift is usually so often a justification to just kind of levy harassment at people? This is kind of like that. The reason so many girls want to feel womanly, and again, another thing is that she's just asserting the idea of what womanly means without, in a actual educational or scholarly environment, the scholastically minded would have some kind of definition of womanly outside of, how the fuck did she say it? Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with these womanly desires in our hearts. Without ever defining what any of that shit is. What the fuck are you talking about? It's not because they feel pressured to fit in social norms. It's because God created and chose them to reflect his beauty and his compassion in that way. In Genesis, God said it is not good for man to be alone. So he created a helper for man, which is a woman. This person has a hot dog in their brain cavity. This is a person who understands the Bible with the same level of comprehension as a chicken nugget. A Sunday schooler's level of understanding. God created a helper, and which is a woman. Women are supposed to be the helpers. Most people assume the word, this is one of my favorite fucking things. I love, so there's been a great series from the QAnon Anonymous folks, and Annie Kelly, who's their kind of British correspondent. There's been a great series called Trad Life, or something like that, where they are going over the kind of trad spate of trad wife influencers and all that shit. And one of my favorite things, these talking points that they repeat over and over and over again, is that this kind of derisive feminism, this kind of reductionist messaging towards women that you are inherently not as good as a man, they try and spin it as though it's not just blatant sexism, which it is, and try and instead say, no, you're not worse than a man. You're just different, and you can't think as good or lift things as good. You're not as strong, and you're not as fast, and you shouldn't try and be those things because you'll never be able to do it like a man can, and men should be in charge of everything because they're just better at things because that's the way God done did it. However, the original word in Hebrew is ezer kenegdo, and that directly translates to helper equal. Additionally, God describes himself in the Bible using ezer kenegdo, or helper, and describes his Holy Spirit as our helper as well. Okay. So then again, you can't establish the original intent and then say this is what we see with the hate church all the time. Therefore, this thing that was said and meant this all that time ago actually means the thing I want it to mean directly now in today. And there's no difference between those two because nothing has changed. God does not view women as less significant than men. Yes, but your movement does. He created us with such intentionality and care, and he made women in his image. I hate the capitalization thing. That's so Christian virtue signaling. Made women in his image of being a helper and in the image of his beauty. If leaning into that role means I am following gender stereotypes, then I am happy to be following a stereotype that aligns with the gifts and ability God gave me as a woman. I do not think men and women are pressured to be more masculine or feminine. Okay. So after you spent, I don't want to call them pages because it's really just like barely paragraphs, they're double spaced. But after you've spent this much time justifying how women should be subservient to men and should fall into these roles that we dictate, and how all of these things that weren't actually in the Bible are actually given to us by God, and that's why we got to do them and respect them. Now you're saying that men and women aren't pressured to fit into those roles. Okay. I strongly disagree with the idea from the article that encouraging acceptance of diverse gender expressions can improve students' confidence. Maybe not yours. But what about other people? Society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders and everyone should be whatever they want is demonic and severely harms American youth. I don't want kids to be teased or bullied. However, okay, if you ever have to write the phrase, I don't want kids to be teased or bullied, period. However, comma, you need to delete the whole thing and start again. Take a long, hard fucking look. Like, what the, how do you type, now, I don't want anybody to be bullied. But, however, pushing the lie that everyone has their own truth and everyone can do whatever they want and be whoever they want is not biblical whatsoever. Oh my God. Okay. We were just kind of talking about philosophy and stuff, and one of the things that I really thought Nietzsche was cooking with when I was reading through Beyond Good and Evil was the idea of morality. And, you know, we all get our morality from different aspects of the things that we grow up with us around. Christians, for example, get a lot of their conception of the world from the morality of Christianity. And that enforces kind of how you see the world, how you navigate the world, unless you intentionally kind of break out from that. Hence, title Beyond Good and Evil, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody has their own truth. Pushing the lie that everyone has their own truth is not biblical whatsoever. Okay, so you believing in a biblical truth, that is your own truth. That is your own little reality that you have had constructed for yourself. And you are trying to force upon everybody else. Right? But everybody else has their own little reality. Their own little way that they see the world. And this person had a fucking breakdown because the way they're trying to force the world to see itself, I guess, just doesn't fucking vibe with everybody else. Like, you are literally contradicting yourself to be saying that pushing the lie that everyone has their own truth isn't biblical whatsoever, because that is a truth that solely belongs to you in this equation. It is not a lie as an assertion, because it is exactly what you are arguing. That you have a truth that is not concurrent with other people's conception of reality. The Bible says that our lives are not our own, but that our lives and bodies belong to the Lord for His glory. I live my life based on this truth and firmly believe that there would be less gender issues and insecurities in children if they were raised knowing they don't belong to themselves. Chat. Could we get an assessment? What do we think from people in the chat, myself included? If every child was raised Christian and had this conception instilled in them from birth that their cognition, their bodies were not their own, that they were not in charge of their life, and additionally probably that if they ever do anything wrong or step out of line, that they're going to be damned to a burning lake of fire and suffer for all eternity. Do we think that is going to completely eliminate trans people from existence? I mean, it's obviously a tactic that's never been tried before with queer people. Like, never have gay people or trans people tried to have been, what's the word I would look for? Converted? Is that a good assessment? Overall, reading articles such as this one encourages me to one day raise my children knowing they have a heavenly Father who loves them and cherishes them deeply, and having their identity firmly rooted in who He is will give them the satisfaction and acceptance that the world can never provide for them. I'm going to be so fucking real. If this is a genuinely held belief, that is the saddest, most empty life possible. The idea of waking up every day and lying to yourself that, yes, this is all part of somebody else's plan. That I have no control over my limited time on this earth. My own conception of reality means nothing because guy in the sky said so. My prayer for the world, and specifically for American society and youth, is that they would not believe the lies being spread from Satan that make them believe they are better off as another gender than what God made them. I pray that they feel God's love and acceptance as who he originally created them to be. And people were shocked this got failed? Like, people fucking are melting down, acting like this is, we finally got those lib professors, all those college commies, or they'll pay now because look at this well-written essay that just happened to quote the Bible. First off, didn't quote the Bible at all. Second off, this is worse than anything I had to proofread or peer review when I was in middle school. There is not a single assertion that is backed up by anything other than another assertion. There is also not any real analysis of the text. I feel I was kind of lost because she would just, again, make these assertions about the text and what it was saying without providing relevant examples. Usually in a kind of breakdown or a response, you want to directly quote, break it down, why you disagree with it, why it's contradictory, or why you have evidence to the contrary. The only evidence this person has for anything is just Bible. They just said, yeah, but what about Bible? The controversy is because she didn't just fail, she got a 0. This def deserves an F. It's absolute shit, but a 0 seems harsh. I would say a 0 is fine because it does not... So here we go. The grading. Reaction papers are graded on a 25-point scale or evaluated based on the following. Does the paper show a clear tie into the assigned article? No. Chat, let's grade it right now. Does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary? No. Thoughtful. Thoughtful is a very important word here. There were no thoughts behind it. No. Is the paper clearly written? Fuck no. I don't even see a single paragraph break. You must write 650 words, body of text, double space, reaction paper, blah, blah, blah. Which, again, 650 words is fucking nothing. Points will be deducted when papers are deficient in any of these areas. I will deduct 10 points if it is between 620 and 649 words. Will not give credit for papers under 620. Papers not turned in by the deadline will not receive credit. Well, that probably explains why she fucking repeated so much shit. Reaction paper should not be a summary, but rather a thoughtful discussion of some aspect of the article. Possible approaches include a discussion of why you feel the topic is important and worthy of study. And her response was it's not. It's because of God. And then just talked about God the entire time. An application of the study or results to your own experiences, which also did not happen. And the way they are trying to spin it is, it's time for conservatives to take a stand and show teachers that we will not be intimidated for sharing conservative or Christian beliefs on assignments. Wow, dude. Also read the comment left by the prof. It was in that thread. Oh, yeah. Let me... Trans professor's response to Samantha's essay. Please note, I am not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead I am deducting point for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the questions for this assignment, contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and is at times offensive. While you are entitled to your own personal beliefs, there is an appropriate time or place to implement them in your reflections. I encourage all students to question or challenge the course material with other empirical findings or testable hypotheses, but using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings of not only this article, but the findings of countless articles across psychology, biology, sociology is not best practice. This is the nicest possible way of saying, no, honey, I'm not doing it because you're a Christian. I'm doing it because you're a fucking idiot. I'm doing it because science as a whole is laughing at you. And it would be wrong for me as a professor to not laugh along with them. You argue that abiding by normative gender roles is beneficial. Parenthetical. It is perfectly fine to believe this. But to then say that everyone should act the same while also saying that people aren't pressured into gendered expectations is contradictory, especially since your arguments reflect a religious pressure to act in gender stereotyped ways. You can say that strict gender norms don't create gender stereotypes, but that isn't true by definition of what a stereotype is. Please note that acknowledging gender stereotypes does not immediately denote a negative connotation, a nuance this article discusses. God damn. So not only did she say, you were wrong, but she said, you're a bitch and probably didn't read the article. Additionally, to call an entire group of people demonic is highly offensive, especially in a minoritized population. You are entitled to your own beliefs, but this isn't a vague narrative of society pushes lies, but instead the result of countless years developing psychological and scientific evidence for these claims and directly interacting with the communities involved. You may personally disagree with this, but that doesn't change the fact that every major psychological, medical, pediatric, and psychiatric association in the United States acknowledges that biologically and psychologically, sex and gender is neither binary nor fixed. I implore you to apply some more perspective and empathy in your work. If you personally disagree with the findings, then by all means share your criticisms, but make sure to do so in a way that is appropriate and using the methodology of empirical psychology as aligned with the learning goals in this class. If you have any additional questions or concerns, blah, blah, blah. I implore you to apply some more perspective and empathy in your work. If you personally disagree, by all means, share your criticism. So what they, again, completely antithetical to the narrative that they want to spin, which is that, oh, these liberal college professors, they just can't take anything. She's saying, no, I implores you, fucking spit your game. Let's talk about it. Have an actual dialectic here. And the way this woman responded was to crash out publicly and get this TA put on administrative leave. Yeah, no, the teacher took time to explain in great detail, and they offered good, constructive criticism. Yeah, no, it is. Blanchy, this seems completely designed to get the writer media attention. It is. This is just somebody trying to engineer, I guess, the next Riley Gaines. Yeah, both Mel and the other maker have had their emails removed from OU's website, presumably to protect from harassment. I wouldn't be surprised. No, it should be a TA. The actual thing was a TA. So if you would like to ensure Oklahoma University protects Mel Kurth from discrimination, there's a change.org petition that everybody should go sign. The fact that the professor's trans has got nothing to do with it. The fact that the student is dumber than a sack of bricks does. Someone who thinks the Bible can be used as a source shouldn't even be in college. I mean, here's the problem. The Bible can be used as a source. No professor would tell you differently. It has to be used as a source in context, not as a fucking roadmap to the meaning of everything in life. And the purpose and definitional mandate behind every aspect of society. Because the entire point of college, the entire point of like dialectics and advancing arguments and, synthesis, antithesis, Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? Synthesis, antithesis. Why is that hard to say today? I guess at least it wasn't AI. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.